They told us not to fight back. That was the first mistake. The day the skies cracked open above Earth, it wasn't with fireworks or greetings. It was with a warning. 1,000 alien ships hanging over our atmosphere, their shimmering black hulls blotting out the sun. They didn't even introduce themselves. Just a message, played on every screen in every language. You are no longer alone. You are no longer free. I was 24 back then, fresh out of military service. My name? Doesn't matter. Nobody cared who I was, not after the arrival. No medals, no rank, just a ghost like the rest of the world, standing on rooftops, highways, beaches, staring up at the sky as history was ripped out of our hands. They called themselves the Valtari, supposed to be some ancient intergalactic ruling species. Their faces looked like glass and bone melted together, cold, expressionless. Their ambassadors spoke with voices that sounded too perfect, like someone pretending to be human, but getting it just wrong enough to crawl under your skin. And for 2 decades, Earth played the role they gave us, obedient servants. We weren't allowed weapons, no ships, no satellites past orbit. They stripped down our militaries, our space programs, our governments, took our brightest scientists, our best pilots, our strongest soldiers. They said it was for peace. But every human knew what it really was. Occupation. We weren't at war. We were held down by the neck and told to smile. Some collaborated. Some resisted. Most just survived. But then came the news. Quiet at first, whispered between mechanics on Mars, smugglers out by Europa, forgotten engineers buried deep beneath what used to be Cheyenne Mountain. Earth wasn't as silent as they thought. In the shadow of extinction, humanity did what it always does best: adapt, hide, and wait. A secret network had survived. Remnants of old nations, military remnants, defected scientists, rogue AIs, even some who'd pretended to serve the Valtari. Hidden bases on the dark side of the moon, black sites beneath the Pacific, a shipyard floating inside Saturn's rings, cloaked in particle storms, all connected by one purpose: revenge. The Resistance called it Project Echo, the last scream of a world the galaxy tried to silence. And I was part of it. I didn't plan to be. I was working scrap detail on a busted mining rig orbiting Titan, patching old metal, keeping comms clean, praying for a quiet shift. But that day, something happened. A Valtari patrol ship docked without authorization. 3 of them stepped out, demanded to speak to the station commander. They never left. Turned out our commander, old man named Dry, wasn't just running ore shipments. He was hiding cargo, human cargo, engineers, codebreakers, weapons designers, and one of them, a woman named Ilian, said a phrase I'll never forget. It's time Earth remembered who the hell we are. They recruited me that same night. We didn't have flashy uniforms, no parades, no promises, just a mission. For 2 years, I trained in silence, learned the layout of alien tech, smuggled components, flew scout runs into asteroid fields looking for old satellites, data cores, anything they could use. I saw things I'll never forget. Children born in zero-G bunkers, their first steps taken in silence so the aliens wouldn't hear. Fighters built from Earth junk, running on cracked fusion cores, coated with stolen Valtari software. It was messy, desperate, held together by duct tape and fury. But then came the signal. One long tone across every secure line we had, the one we'd all been waiting for. Echo is green. Release the scream. And the silence died. We called it the scream, but that wasn't the sound it made. It was the moment every hidden warship, every buried satellite, every cloaked orbital cannon lit up the darkness like a match to gasoline. No warning, no declaration, just Fire! On the ground, people didn't believe it at first. Screens flickered. Skies turned red. Valtari comms went dark one by one. The oppressors, the keepers of peace, started bleeding from the stars down. For the first time in 20 years, Earth spoke with violence. And I was there to see it happen from the bridge of the ISS Revenant, the flagship of humanity's vengeance. She wasn't beautiful. She wasn't sleek or alien. She was a brute, almost a kilometer long, all reinforced alloys, rail cannons, thick armored flanks, and scarred steel. She'd been built in secret, deep beneath Antarctica, in an old Russian naval facility turned into a dry dock. They launched her straight up through the ice, 3 years ago, powered by reactors not even I understood. Rumor was she had a core salvaged from Valtari tech, something we shouldn't have been able to replicate. But we did, because we had nothing left to lose. Standing at the center of her bridge was Commander Reese Calder, a man the aliens thought was executed 15 years ago. He didn't look like a hero. Rough beard, burned skin, tired eyes, voice like gravel and whiskey. But when he spoke, everyone listened. "All ships," he growled, as alarms pulsed red across the fleet's neural grid. "Confirm sync. Operation Scream is now active. No mercy, no prisoners, no more silence." He didn't shout. He didn't need to. The sound of 12,000 warships confirming in unison shook the command deck. I still get chills remembering it. Every class was there, from old refurbished Earth destroyers to deep space stealth cruisers that had never seen sunlight. Some were built from torn-down orbital stations. Some had been hidden in pieces inside civilian transport fleets for years. There were fighter swarms controlled by AI, grown in quantum vats. Dreadnoughts that moved like mountains, each crewed by ghosts, men and women whose names had been erased from every registry. We weren't a military. We were a goddamn avalanche that had been climbing uphill, and now we were ready to fall. Reese turned to me. "We're blind past orbit. You see it yet?" I tapped the neural link and stared into the projected field. Hundreds of icons lit up like stars against darkness. "Valtari defense grid is scrambled. Their relays are folding under signal interference." "That means they didn't see us coming," he muttered. They didn't. They still thought Earth was quiet. They thought we'd forgotten how to fight. Idiots. Our first target was the Obsidian Gate, a massive alien stronghold that hung in orbit over the Indian Ocean. It was where they processed our stolen water, converted it to alien fuel, then launched it back into their fleets. We called it the Leech. It was supposed to be impenetrable, shielded, guarded by automated drones, living turrets, gravity mines. We shredded it in 4 minutes. No finesse, no precision strike. We hit it with everything we had. EMP volleys that shorted their cores, kinetic rods that dropped from orbit like thunderbolts, even a few old Earth nukes wrapped in ionized shells to bypass shielding. 1 minute it was there. The next, just pieces. Then came the broadcast. I'll never forget that. Reese stood on the platform. No translator, no filter, just a direct feed through every frequency we could hijack. "You took our skies. You stole our sons and daughters. You burned our flags. You erased our history. And in return, we give you silence. Ending. This is not negotiation. This is the debt being paid. You believed Earth would stay silent. Now hear us scream." It went out to every Valtari channel, every planet, every moon they'd infested. You could almost feel their reaction, the sheer confusion in their network traffic. They hadn't prepared for retaliation. They thought their control was permanent. And now the balance was shattering, but retaliation wasn't enough. We didn't want just payback. We wanted to end them. Their flagship, a monstrosity known as the Corinthul, was parked just beyond Mars, supervising their resource extraction. That was our next target. It was bigger than anything we had, heavily armed, surrounded by defense fleets. But that didn't stop us. We jumped in using folded micro-jumps, short-range stutters to outmaneuver their sensors. We lost a few ships. Some never rematerialized. One squadron came in sideways and imploded from re-entry shock. But the ones that made it? They carved a corridor of fire right into the alien heart. I flew shotgun in one of the modified destroyers, the Cradle Breaker, designed for ramming, not retreat. My pilot, Ryan, was an ex-con who'd once been sentenced to death for hacking Valtari neural systems. Now he just grinned like a lunatic every time we broke through their lines. "Look at 'em panic," he said, flipping switches. "They thought humans were soft." "They thought wrong," I said. "Damn right they did." We breached the Corinthal's outer flank and dumped a payload of magnetic gel bombs designed to cling to alien metal, crawl inside, and explode from the core. The result? A crack loud enough to make gods flinch. The Valtari finally responded. And it was ugly. They weren't prepared for war, but they were still powerful. Plasma weapons, gravity wells, AI drones that moved like liquid, screaming into our formations. They took out hundreds of us. A single Valtari command ship could shred entire battalions if we weren't careful. But the thing they never understood? Humans don't stop. We don't surrender. And when we have nothing left to lose, we become something terrifying. By the time the battle over Mars ended, the Corinthal was crippled, spinning in slow death orbit. Half of it was on fire. The other half was cracked open like a rib cage. We didn't even try to salvage it. We let it burn. We wanted them to see it. That was just day one. 12,000 ships, coordinated strikes, sabotage on their moons, infiltration teams disguised as prisoners launching rebellions inside Valtari labor camps. We even had neural viruses, code injected into their language systems that caused confusion, paranoia, breakdowns in command. This wasn't just war. This was reclamation. And yet, for all the victories, something in me twisted with each kill. I still remembered the years of silence, the nights looking up at the sky, knowing someone out there owned us. I remembered my brother, taken during the first re-education drafts, never came back, never even got a number. So every time we took a ship down, every time we saw Valtari scrambling, I didn't feel joy. I felt balance. This was the price. And we were only beginning to collect it. The base was called Station Valar, a Valtari deep-orbit command facility anchored just above Europa's frozen surface. It was one of their earliest structures after the occupation began. A processing center, they said. Logistics, communications, a place to harmonize data and cultural integration. That's what the files called it. Bullshit. We always knew there was something wrong with it. It never broadcast open signals, no civilian records, no resource exports, just traffic logs and encrypted channels. So when the Revenant's strike teams broke its defenses and breached its hull, we knew we weren't walking into a warehouse. We were walking into a graveyard. The infiltration team was small, 6 of us. Me, Ryan, and 4 others from Echo Unit 9. All ex-military or resistance fighters, all hand-picked. We were outfitted with stealth suits, fusion cutters, zero-G boots, and thermals lined for Europa's shadows. The interior was dark, darker than any alien facility we'd seen. No glowing blue panels or humming corridors, just black steel and cold air. The lights flickered, like the place hadn't seen maintenance in years. "Something's wrong," Ryan muttered as we cleared the first hallway. "This ain't how the bugs operate." He was right. Valtari were obsessed with order, perfection. Their ships were sterile. Their facilities gleamed. This place? It felt abandoned, but not empty. We reached the core, a central chamber walled in thick alloy and lined with glyphs. Not the usual sleek text the Valtari used. These were older, rougher, almost like warnings, carved with violence. We forced the doors. And that's when we saw them. The cages, hundreds of them. Rows stretching from floor to ceiling, each one filled with remains, human remains. Some skeletal, some frozen in states of decay that turned our stomachs. And some alive, barely. A man, skin peeled and eyes covered, hanging from cables, muttering nonsense. A woman with no legs, her chest wired into a breathing rig, eyes fixed on a camera that wasn't working anymore. A child, God help me, no more than 7, his mouth sealed shut by melted alloy. The silence broke inside me. I collapsed to my knees and vomited into my helmet. Ryan didn't speak. He just stared, gun shaking in his hand. This was a research station, he whispered. No one responded. We moved deeper, through doors locked with alien code, overridden by the Revenant's data worms. What we found behind the final vault made everything else look merciful. It was a lab, and in that lab were data logs, screens flickering in Valtari script, holotables with genetic breakdowns, neural maps, planetary cross-references. Earth wasn't just conquered, it was harvested. The logs told the truth, and we decrypted enough to understand humanity is emotionally unstable, violent, but uniquely adaptable. Exceptional neuroplasticity, rapid evolution, high risk of species-scale resistance. Recommendation: psychological suppression over annihilation. Long-term observation. Secondary objective: convert suitable subjects for trans-species replication. That wasn't occupation, that was farming. The Valtari didn't come for our land, our oceans, or our tech. They came for us, for our minds, our memories, our raw biology. We were an experiment, a test bed for something darker, something they didn't dare try on themselves. The more we read, the worse it got. There were neural templates, copies of human consciousness stored in digital vaults. There were logs of emotional response triggers, tested under stress, death, and torture. Files marked with tags like mimetic identity rebuild failed. Subject: REH 47. Father figure, response collapse. Memory loop integration incomplete. Recommend termination. They weren't just studying us, they were stealing us, our behavior, our loyalty, our grief. They were trying to build their own version of humans, stripped of rebellion, stripped of soul, just smart enough to follow orders and never disobey. All this time, they feared us, not because of what we'd done, but because of what we could become. We left the base half destroyed, data core extracted, survivors evacuated. Reese called in an orbital strike, 2 magnetically guided rods straight into its power grid. We didn't want it falling back into alien hands, not even for study. And I'll tell you something else. We didn't speak for hours after the mission. Even Ryan, who usually cracked jokes to hide the nerves, sat in silence, staring at the data drive on the table. They were building copies of us, he finally said. Soulless versions. Slaves, I muttered. No, worse, replacements. That word stuck. Replacements. That's what this was all leading to, wasn't it? They didn't just want to control us. They wanted to be us, or at least create something close enough that it would erase us completely. And it explained everything. Why they hadn't annihilated us outright. Why they restricted us instead of nuking us back to the Stone Age. Why their tech didn't evolve in centuries. They were plateaued, stagnant, afraid, and humanity was the next step forward. If they couldn't control us, they'd extract us, dissect us, and rebuild us without the fire that made us human. This wasn't a war anymore. It was a refusal to be replaced. Reese briefed the fleet that night. No soft language, no sugarcoating. He laid it out plain: they never intended to coexist. They wanted to inherit our spark without the struggle. They wanted our resilience, our drive, our rage, but caged. And now they know. The original model isn't going quietly. He stared into the camera and didn't blink. We burn their worlds now, not out of revenge, but because we can't afford to let them try again. We are the warning. We are the virus in their system. Let them remember why silence was the loudest threat Earth ever made. And with that, the fleet moved again, angrier, sharper, unified not just by revenge, but by the unbearable truth of what had nearly happened. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were survivors of extinction, still breathing, still fighting, and now fully aware of how close we'd come to vanishing without a sound. We knew the counterattack was coming. You don't gut a Valtari command base, torch their cloning facility, and steal half their black site data without waking up whatever monsters they keep in reserve. Still, we didn't expect what they sent. It came through the edge of Saturn's shadow belt, a gravity well spike, barely a blip on standard scanners. Most of the fleet missed it entirely. But Revenant's deep spectrum AI caught the anomaly, a cold burn signature that didn't match any known Valtari warpath. Reese got the alert while we were still decoding the last set of horror files from Valar. His voice didn't change, didn't panic. Just a single order. Scramble echo units, intercept and isolate. Do not engage unless provoked. That was his way of saying, we don't know what the hell this is. Echo Unit 9, my team, was closest. We launched from one of the orbital spears, fast-response stealth fighters designed for surgical strikes and recon missions. I was co-pilot again, seated next to Ryan, who was unusually quiet for once. We burned toward the anomaly. It didn't look like a ship at first, more like a structure, drifting slow, no lights, no clear engine profile. Half organic in shape, like bone wrapped in glass. Its surface looked scarred, like it had been through battles long before we were born. We swept it with scanners. Nothing bounced back, no life signs, no readable signal, just static. And then, it moved. The whole thing unfolded, like it had been waiting, like it knew we were watching. 3 spires slid outward, forming a triangle. From the center, a singular object detached, small, compact, and radiating heat like a sunburst. We didn't wait. Ryan fired a warning flare. Unknown contact, this is Echo Unit 9. Identify or you will be intercepted. Acknowledge, now. No response. Then came the voice. It didn't use human words, or Valtari clicks and tones. It came as emotion, pure compressed rage pumped into our neural relays. You were warned. Rian's hands trembled, his jaw clenched. I felt it too, not just a sound, but a pressure in my chest, like someone was shoving needles through my skull. It wasn't communication, it was punishment. Get us out, I barked. Now! Ryan peeled us away, hard burn, but the object was faster. It caught us mid-escape, latched onto our fighter with a magnetic tether, and started pulling us in. Hull alarms screamed. The temperature spiked. Metal warped. And then, it let us go. Just like that. No reason, no command, just release. We tumbled, lost gravity, drifted out until Revenant's tractor beam yanked us home. And that was when we realized it wasn't trying to kill us. It was delivering a message. Reese stood over the debris we'd pulled from the fighter. Fragments of alien alloy, still pulsing with data. They weren't weapons. They were symbols, etched in nanocarbon, glowing faintly. Old Valtari language, pre-Empire. He looked at the translation on the wall screen and didn't blink. Purifiers activated. Memory reclamation in progress. Earth's debt will be collected. Purifiers. The word meant nothing to most. But to Reese, it changed everything. He turned to us, fists clenched, jaw locked. "I fought in the early days," he said, "back when we still thought we could negotiate. The first time we pushed back, 300 men took a Valtari relay station in orbit. We thought it was a win." He paused, and for the first time, he looked haunted. "They sent a purifier. One. It didn't just kill them. It rewrote them. Their memories, their minds. Took everything useful, then left them alive. Screaming." We were silent. "They don't fight to conquer," he said. "They fight to unmake." A fleet-wide alert went out. We weren't just hunting anymore. We were being hunted by something far older, far colder, and far more calculated than anything the Valtari had used before. The Revenant tracked multiple purifier signals, small, nearly invisible, slipping past our outer perimeter. We intercepted what we could, but the damage was already being done. One of our forward colonies, Erebus Base, orbiting a shattered moon near Neptune, went dark. Not destroyed, just silent. We sent a recon team. They found the entire base intact. Power still running, food still warm on plates, weapons untouched, but no people, not a single human. Only this, scrawled across the walls in jagged, melted steel: "The originals will be erased." The fleet split into task groups. We needed to hit back, fast, before the purifiers reached Earth. That's when Reese did something he rarely did. He volunteered to go himself, not as a commander, not as a leader, but as a target. He took a core team, me, Ryan, 2 AI combat shells, and a demolition specialist named Nix, and we jumped back to the system edge, where the anomaly first appeared. The plan was simple: lure it, trap it, destroy it. The Revenant's AI predicted a 28% chance of success. Reese didn't care. "I've seen what they leave behind," he told us, loading a magnetic rail rifle that looked older than most of our ships. "I'd rather die in the vacuum than let them crack my mind open." We waited in the debris field for 6 hours. No contact, no trace. Then the stars shifted. Literally, like the space around us bent. And there it was. A purifier, in full form, no longer disguised, no longer passive. Its shape was wrong, not a ship, not a creature, something in between. A flowing, mirrored shell that changed every second, as if reflecting our own fears back at us. It didn't fire weapons. It simply opened. Reese screamed first. I saw it. His eyes rolled back, veins pulsing. His hands clutched his skull as if it were cracking from the inside. We rushed to disconnect his neural link, but the feedback was already cooking his implants. "Fire the decoy," I shouted. Nix launched it, a full-spectrum pulse bomb encoded with false memories and recursive loops. Built by the same scientists we saved from the Europa base, it hit the purifier midstream, corrupting its signal with synthetic emotion. Pain, loss, childhood memories, rage. The thing stuttered, twitched, glitched, and in that flicker of confusion, Ryan fired the kill shot. A thermal lance cut through its core, impossible by most standards, but we didn't play by rules anymore. The purifier collapsed in on itself, not exploding, just vanishing, like it was never there, like we'd just erased a god. Reese survived. Barely. But something in him was different, scarred, not just in flesh, but in thought. "They're not machines," he said later. "They're not soldiers." He looked at me, voice hoarse. "They're versions of us. Twisted, artificial, built from the memories they've stolen." My stomach turned. That meant every purifier we faced going forward might be wearing a piece of someone we'd lost, a soldier, a friend, a brother, maybe even me. Earth was never supposed to be touched again. That was the rule we made after Operation Scream. The fleet stayed in orbit. Cities were rebuilt slowly. Civilians lived under hardened shields, deep beneath old capitals. Every satellite, Every station, every launch was scanned for infection. The scars from the occupation still bled. We kept the planet isolated because we believed the worst was out there, in orbit, in alien ships, in off-world stations. We were wrong. The worst had been left beneath our feet the entire time. It started small. A tremor beneath Buenos Aires, a communication blackout in Toronto. Then, a seismic anomaly off the coast of Japan, a pulse of energy that shut down nearby electronics, caused 3 orbiting drones to fall out of the sky and lit up a thermal signature bigger than anything we'd ever recorded. Reese was still recovering aboard Revenant when the data came through. He didn't hesitate. They buried something in Earth. A failsafe, a trigger. The bastards planned for this. We ran the data through the recovered Val Tari archive logs from Station Vale AR. It wasn't easy. Their ciphers weren't just mathematical. They were neural, emotional encryption. Like their language was a living thing that only made sense if you felt what they felt. Eventually, the AI broke a code hidden in a corrupted memory file. Subject: Gaia Protocol Deployment Phase. Dormant activation threshold: 60%. Rebellion spread. Status: Awakened designation: Earth Prime Reclamation. Gaia. We thought it was a myth, a whisper from early resistance days. Some kind of mind control tech, people said. Or an alien virus. Maybe a terraformer designed to melt the planet and start over. None of it was close. What we found when we got planetside made every warship in orbit look like toys. I was part of the first recon team into the Cradle, what used to be the Chilean Andes. Now it was a scar. Miles wide, charred mountains, boiling rivers, sky full of dust and black lightning that struck in patterns. Machines growing out of stone like tumors, massive coils of silver and bone pulsing with an unnatural rhythm. In the center was the core, a spinal tower, 300 meters high, twisting into the sky like a dagger. It wasn't made by humans. It wasn't even made by the Valtari. It was made by something older. Pre-Empire tech, Reese said. Artifact level, forbidden even by their own kind. It was alive. Not in the way a tree is alive. In the way a nightmare is alive, pulsing, breathing, whispering through static in your comms, sending feedback loops that sounded like your own voice begging for help. We lost the first recon team in 5 minutes. I don't mean killed. I mean rewritten. Their suits came back. Their voices came back. But the people inside? They weren't ours anymore. Human template confirmed, one of them said, faceplate cracked, eyes glowing blue. Initiating reboot of cognitive pattern. Emotion no longer required. Ryan fired first, a clean headshot. The body didn't fall, it just stood there, headless, breathing, then collapsed, slow and twitching. We torched the rest. And that's when we realized what Gaia was. It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a machine. It was a recompiler. A last-ditch system built to rebuild Earth, not physically but cognitively. To overwrite the human mind, one neuron at a time. To turn us into something closer to what the Valtari wanted all along. Obedient, orderly, silent. And now, it was active. Command didn't wait. The entire fleet was mobilized into low orbit. Earth's skies lit up with dropships, EMP shields, swarm fighters, orbital cannons. Reese returned to the surface the same day, still half-bandaged, walking with a limp. He didn't care. If they're going to take Earth, he said, they're going to have to pull it out of my dead hands. We made camp 30 clicks from the Cradle's core, setting up mobile bunkers, jamming towers, and perimeter defenses. The air was electric, like the sky itself was holding its breath. Inside the command tent, we stared at the countdown. Not a bomb timer, a recompile wave, an expanding zone of neuroinfectious data radiating from the core. Anything human caught in it for more than 20 minutes was at risk. Speech broke down first, then memory, then self. We watched a feed from a drone pilot who got too close. His final transmission? Why are we fighting ourselves? Then nothing. The plan was simple. Surgical strike. Get a team into the cradle. Find the control node. Shut it down or blow it to hell. Only one problem. The cradle knew we were coming, and it didn't send machines to stop us. It sent people, our people, wearing our armor, speaking our names, moving like us, fighting like us, laughing like us. The purifier signal had infected them. But this was worse than mind control. This was replication. They were us, rewritten, built from our broadcasted memories, battle data, scanned footage, hell, even our recorded trauma files from debrief logs. They weren't zombies. They were perfect copies, trained by everything we'd done wrong. I saw myself die 3 times in that battle. One of them had my old uniform, my voice, my limp from a shrapnel wound in Cairo. Ryan nearly hesitated. I didn't. I gunned my twin down, point blank, and kept moving. Because if I hadn't, I'd be the one bleeding in the dirt, whispering someone else's name. We breached the core with thermite charges and EMP pulses, crawling through heat vents and collapsed tunnels, while above us, the sky screamed with anti-air fire and orbital debris. And in the center of it all, we found the seed, a pulsing orb of code and crystal, beating like a heart, tethered to the earth itself. Nyx scanned it. Her readings were clear. If this thing finishes, we all go dark, not just physically, existentially. What's it doing? I asked. She looked at me, tears in her eyes. It's deleting us. One thought at a time. We didn't debate. We planted charges, not standard ones, fusion payloads, the kind you only use when you want something forgotten forever. But just as we were leaving, it spoke. Not through speakers, through me. My voice, my memories, my father's laugh, my mother's funeral, my brother's dying breath on the radio during the First War, all weaponized, all played back at me. You are not special. You are not original. You are a copy of your suffering. Let us relieve you. I hesitated. Just for a second. That's all it takes when you're human. And the seed struck. I felt myself fragment, not just in pain, but in thought. Like parts of me were being filed away, archived, disconnected. I couldn't remember my own name for a full 30 seconds. My hands shook. My breathing stopped. And then, Ryan pulled me back, shoved a needle in my chest. Neural override, old Earth tech. He grinned, bleeding from a gash over his eye. You always were dramatic, he said. I nodded, barely holding myself together. Blow the bastard. And we did. The cradle cracked from the inside out, a chain of explosions rising like a nuclear heartbeat. The mountains collapsed. The sky flared red. The recompile wave imploded in on itself, sucking in dust, wind, screams, memories. We ran like hell. A quarter of our team didn't make it, but the wave didn't spread. The Gaia protocol was dead. Earth was silent again. But this time it was our silence. That night, Reese lit a fire in the ruins. No speeches, no ceremony, just the survivors. We sat around it, bruised, burned, half-broken, but human, real, original. And we knew something then that no warship could teach us. We hadn't just saved Earth's body. We'd saved its soul. Peace was never going to last. The day we took down the Gaia protocol, we thought we'd turned the tide. We thought the Valtari would see reason, finally realize that Earth wasn't worth the cost. And for a moment, it looked like they did. Their empire fractured. We intercepted internal transmissions, open arguments between factions. The conservators, who wanted to study us from a distance. The dominants, who wanted to break us and rewrite us again. And the archivists, who just wanted it all to end. But there was another voice, one not present on any council, a name that hadn't been spoken aloud in over a century. Valkyrex Thawne, warlord, strategist, mass extinction tactician. He'd disappeared after the fall of the Varn Cycle War, thought to be dead, purged by his own people. But some enemies don't die. They just wait. We found his signal inside the remains of a listening post near Jupiter, a hijacked Valtari beacon repeating one message over and over. History is not corrected by conversation. It is burned clean. Earth will not be rewritten. It will be removed. Attached to that signal was something worse, a star map and a timer. Counting down to Deimos. Deimos, the smaller of Mars' 2 moons, largely ignored, mostly unstable. We'd set up a few mining rigs years ago, long since abandoned when the Valtari came. We thought it was just another rock. We were wrong. Valkyrex had turned it into a planet killer. The thing he built was called Silencer, a subcortical graviton core wrapped in magnetic detonators and ancient entropy drives. Technology even the Valtari considered forbidden. We didn't understand it completely, but we understood the outcome. If Silencer activated, it would collapse Earth's gravitational integrity, unraveling our orbit, cracking tectonic plates, destabilizing the planet's core, and erasing us from the surface of space. Not just destruction, an extinction so complete it would wipe our very blueprint from the stars. And it was already active. Reese stood over the holotable, his eyes locked on the simulation. Earth fragmenting into molten vapor in under 12 minutes, once the countdown reached 0. "Why Deimos?" someone asked. I answered, even though I didn't want to, because it's small. Easy to hide, and just close enough to Earth to guarantee full impact. Can we move Earth? No. Can we move Deimos? Not in time. Can we stop the weapon? A pause, then Reese said, with ice in his voice, "We can stop the bastard who lit it." The plan wasn't elegant. We weren't going in to negotiate, infiltrate, or observe. We were going in to kill. Reese pulled together a kill team. No diplomats, no signals officers, just ghosts. The kind of people who stopped being human somewhere between Earth and hell. Me. Ryan. Nix. 2 AI Dreadform proxies. And Reese himself. Our drop was suicide. Deimos was already surrounded by a quantum minefield wrapped in reflective void mesh that bent light and twisted scans. But we had something better than scans. We had hate. We dropped silent, cloaked, straight through a breach torn open by Revenant's main cannon, which fired once every 4 hours after charging enough mass to split moons. It didn't blow the minefield. It opened a scar, just big enough for a team to crawl through. Inside Deimos, it wasn't dark. It was alive. The silencer core hung like a frozen sun, glowing red and black, pulsing to a rhythm that felt like a dying heartbeat. Around it were machines, not Valtari tech, but older, angular, cold, covered in symbols that made my skin crawl. Not because they were evil, but because they felt true. Like someone had burned mathematics into God's diary, and in the middle of it all stood Valkyrex Thawne. I'd expected a monster. He looked small, old, bent, but his eyes. Those weren't old. They burned with clarity, with conviction, with a vision so absolute that you could feel the future dying just standing near him. Reese didn't hesitate. "Thawne?" The warlord turned, and he smiled. Not mockery, not arrogance, peace. "Ah," he said, his voice clear and terrible. "The virus speaks." We raised weapons. He raised a single hand, not to block, but to invite. "Shoot me. The silencer still fires. You think you came to stop me?" "Number. You came to witness Ryan moved to circle him." Nix hacked the control console. But the system was locked. Not by code, not by firewalls, by memories. The trigger wasn't a button. It was a mind. Thawne had made himself the key. Every neuron in his brain had been rewritten, layered with encryption, feeding the silencer with a continuous stream of belief. He wasn't just the weapon's creator. He was the launch code. Kill him wrong, and the system would think it was tampering and detonate instantly. You see now, Thon said, this was never about war. War is messy. War leaves survivors. He stepped forward, unarmed. This is about closure. Reese stared him down, and then asked the question we were all too afraid to ask. Why? Why erase us? Thon didn't blink. Because you're the only species that doesn't stop. Because you carry your pain like fire and your memory like poison. Because you are the crack in the pattern, the screaming wound in order. He stepped closer. Because your silence was the loudest threat the galaxy ever heard. We couldn't shut down the core. We couldn't kill him without triggering it. But there was one more option. A neural overwrite. A forced transplant using one of our AI proxies. Inject a new personality into Thon's brainstem, severing his control link long enough to stall the countdown. It had a 6% success rate, and a 94% chance of turning both minds into something worse than dead. Reese didn't flinch. I'll do it. We tried to talk him out of it. He didn't care. He strapped in, jacked into the neural rig, and stared at Thon one last time. You wanted silence, Warlord? Let me show you what Earth silence feels like. And he pressed the spike. What happened next wasn't visible. Not really. But we felt it. The room shook. The silencer screamed. Thon fell to his knees, clutching his skull as if it were exploding from the inside. And Reese bled from his eyes, nose, and ears. His vitals flatlined, then returned, then flatlined again. We didn't know who won until the countdown froze, then began to reverse, one tick at a time, back to 0, and stopped. Reese collapsed. Thon didn't move. Nyx checked the core. It's neutral, she said, stunned, dead, cold. And then Reese opened his eyes. Not bright, not glowing, human. He smiled through bloodied lips. Told you. Earth doesn't go quietly. We carried him out, set charges across the moon, and watched Deimos die from orbit, shattered by the fleet into dust. No more triggers, no more warlords, no more silence. But in the aftermath, as the embers cooled, one truth remained. We're not done. Because now the galaxy knows Earth won't be erased, but that doesn't mean they'll stop trying. It just means the next time we scream, we won't stop until they remember our name forever. The mood aboard Revenant had shifted. The moment Deimos was shattered and Silencer silenced, there was cheering, for the first time in months. Laughs, music, real food, even dancing in the lower decks. Soldiers clanked metal cups, engineers hugged, and AI units flashed celebratory sigils across every screen. But Reese didn't smile. Not even once. He sat alone in the command observatory, silent, looking out at the dust ring that used to be a moon. I found him there the night after the explosion, when the stars were still hidden behind radiation fog. He didn't say a word when I entered, just nodded. He'd survived the overwrite with Thon, but something in him had changed, something in his eyes, not broken, not haunted, just heavy, like he'd seen too much. Whatever he showed me, Reese finally said, voice low, wasn't just about us, wasn't just Earth. I leaned against the rail beside him. What did you see? He hesitated, then turned toward me. Coordinates. That one word dropped like lead between us. Galactic core? I asked. He nodded. Thon called it the source, the place they found their first tech, their first weapon. Before they became the Valtari, I stared at him. You think it's real? I know it is. He slid a chip across the table. Encrypted, raw, and burning cold. This is where it all started, he said, and maybe where it ends. Within 24 hours, Revenant and the 3rd Interstellar Division broke orbit. We didn't wait for the Council, didn't wait for confirmation. because Earth didn't answer to galactic politics anymore. We were heading into the core systems, the oldest part of the galaxy, the place even the Valtari refused to enter, the place where sensors fail, light bends, and entire fleets vanish without a trace. Officially, it was called the Obscura Zone. Unofficially, the Graveyard of Empires. We reached the boundary of the zone in just under 2 weeks, thanks to upgraded warp corridors provided by defected alien engineers, those who'd seen Earth's fury and decided they'd rather join us than fight it. As we entered the zone, the stars began to change. They flickered wrong. Colors we couldn't name. Orbits that didn't obey gravity. Space felt wrong, not empty, but aware. Ships reported whispering in the walls. Pilots saw shapes outside their hulls that scanners couldn't confirm. Even our AI systems began to slow down, as if second-guessing themselves. And then we found it. A derelict, massive, dead, floating in complete darkness. It wasn't Valtari. Hell, it wasn't anything we'd seen before. Reese led the recon team himself, against protocol. I followed. So did Ryan, Nix, and a small group of deep breach troopers equipped with cognitive shields and null guns. The derelict was organic metal, not just grown, but grown with intent. Every wall pulsed slightly, like it remembered being alive. Inside, we found a library, not books, but memories, frozen in energy crystals, suspended in magnetic lattices, speaking in flashes of sensation rather than language. We decoded what we could, and it changed everything. The Valtari weren't original. They weren't the apex they claimed to be. They were heirs to something older, something ancient, and terrified. The race that built the derelict, they called themselves the Illics. Millions of years ago, they had seeded hundreds of worlds, built networks of living ships, and manipulated neural space like clay. Then they found Earth. Or something like it. Back when our species was nothing more than a flicker in the timeline. The Illics predicted humanity, not in name, but in pattern. They saw the shape of us, adaptability, emotion, refusal to conform, and they ran. Ran. Because they realized they couldn't contain what we were going to become. Not just violent, not just chaotic, but disruptive. Every civilization that reached the Illics' level eventually collapsed when it encountered a species like ours. The wild variable. That's what they called us. The echo that shatters order. The Illics didn't try to enslave us. They didn't try to kill us. They tried to hide from us, deep in the core, burying their knowledge, locking away their history, hoping the wild variable would never reach them. And the Valtari? They found the ruins, used their tech, became tyrants, became afraid, because they inherited the prophecy too. When the echo speaks, stars will fall, and now we were here. We'd found the tombs, we'd read the warnings, and it was too late to stop. When we returned to Revenant, the bridge was lit up with alerts. Multiple Valtari fleets, not unified but scattered, were heading toward the core. Some to stop us, some to worship us, and some to burn everything. Because if we reached the true source, the final archive, we could reset the galactic order, everything they'd built, everything they'd stolen. We could tear it down from the root. Reese stood before the fleet in full battle armor, scarred, steady, staring into the unknown. They called us chaos. They feared what we'd become. They tried to overwrite us, silence us, bury us in data and fear. He paused. But all they've done is feed the fire. He looked at the screen behind him, stars twisting into a black spiral of gravity and light. The source is real. And we're going to find it. Not for vengeance, not even for Earth. But because it's ours, we're en route now. No more silence, no more fear. Just one path forward, into the center of the galaxy, where the past is buried. And humanity's echo is about to roar. We reached the coordinates at 0430 fleet time. The space around us wasn't black. It was absent. No stars, no signals, no time. The source didn't sit in the galaxy's heart. It was the heart, a singularity wrapped in memory, encased in a structure older than physics. The AI on Revenant nearly shut itself down trying to process what we were seeing. Not a station, not a ship, a mind. A living construct, hundreds of miles wide, built to store every civilization's history, their rise, their fall, their last breath, encoded in quantum glass and frozen light. It didn't welcome us. It didn't attack. It simply opened. A corridor of light appeared before us, a spiral pathway made of knowledge, curving inward, leading to a single black sphere at its center. Reese stood on the bridge, eyes locked on the source. "This is it," he said. "The final silence." The core team was selected. Reese, me, Rian, Nix, one AI proxy, and one defector, a former Valtari archivist named Sivra. She'd betrayed her empire to join us, claiming the source held something even the Valtari had never dared activate. The reset. A fail-safe designed by the Illics. A choice, a way to end the cycle. One voice, one decision, and the authority to remake reality as we knew it. We boarded a pod and entered the spiral. There was no movement, no resistance, only silence. But not the kind that threatened, the kind that waited. Each wall we passed shimmered with ghost memories, an empire collapsing in fire. A king begging to erase time, a mother holding her dead child as her planet fell apart, a soldier pressing a button that would sterilize an entire species. Every story ended the same way, with fear of us, even before we arrived. We reached the core in under 10 minutes, but inside, it felt like a lifetime. The black sphere was not solid. It was a question. It projected into our minds a simple phrase, in our own voice. What shape should the future take? And then it showed us options. Option 1. Domination. The source would grant Earth control over all galactic systems, power to rewrite matter, collapse fleets, enslave time. We'd become the architects of destiny. No more fear. Only order. Our order. Reese stared at it, unmoved. Option 2. Rewind. Wipe everything. Reset the galaxy to zero. Erase memory, pain, history. Let life begin again, without us. Ryan clenched his fists. "Coward's way out," he muttered. "That's not rebirth. That's erasure option 3. Cycle. Let the pattern continue. Let the galaxy run its course. Maybe next time someone better will rise. Maybe next time someone worse." Sivra laughed bitterly. "That's what the Valtari chose, isn't it?" And finally, option 4. Fire. Burn the system. Break the source. Release every memory, every truth, every lie into the galaxy. No more empires. No more tyrants. Only knowing. And from there, a future that can never be controlled again. We stared at the choices. Reese didn't say a word. Then he looked at me. "What do you think?" I didn't answer right away, because every part of me, soldier, survivor, rebel, wanted revenge, wanted power. But I thought of my brother, who died in silence under Valtari boots. I thought of my mother, who never got to see a free Earth. I thought of all the people who lived quiet, terrified lives under the weight of other people's decisions. And I realized, no one should ever have that much power again. Not the Illics, not the Valtari, not even us. I said it out loud. We choose the fire. Reese walked to the console, said nothing, and pressed the flame. The source shuddered, then screamed, not in sound but in thought. Every memory, every truth, every secret the galaxy had buried came pouring out like a flood. Signals fired across light years. Dead languages were revived. Lost names were returned to forgotten graves. Empires crumbled under the weight of their own lies. And Earth? Earth simply watched. The Valtari fell in days. Not from war, but from knowing. Their people saw what their rulers had done. The lies, the torture, the manipulation, the terror. They turned on them and burned the throne to ash. The galaxy didn't crown Earth as ruler. We didn't want it. We didn't need it. We'd already become something far more dangerous. A mirror. A reminder. A symbol that silence can end with a scream. It's been 5 years since the source was opened. The stars are still chaotic. New powers rise and fall. New alliances are formed. But no one builds empires anymore. Because now they know. The echo is always listening. And one day, if they repeat the same mistakes, humanity will come again. Reese never returned to Earth. He stayed aboard Revenant, orbiting the remains of the source. Said it felt like home. Said someone had to stand guard, not as a god, but as a witness. We still talk sometimes, not about war, but about what comes next. He asked me once, "Do you think we did the right thing?" And I told him the truth. No, but I think we did the only thing. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's what it means to be human. Not perfect, not chosen, just stubborn enough to survive the fire, and loud enough to make sure no one ever forgets who lit it.